Hello there, and welcome to our second episode of Coaching from the Heart. And joining me live on this Hangout is my good friend and colleague, Harold Feddersen.
Hi, Tyler.
Thank you for being with me. And our topic for the day is called The Illusion of Control. And before we jump off into that conversation piece, I just want to give people a place to go where they can find both of us if they're interested in our work, our coaching, spiritual teaching. And so if you resonate with me and my work, you can find me at www.coachtylerthurman.blogspot.com. And it's brought to you by Tyler Thurman Coaching. And do you want to tell people where they can find you, Harold?
So there are three places you can find me. One is I have a blog called Heart to Hand, and it's on WordPress. And I also have a Facebook page, The Awakening Heart. I think the URL is Harold Feddersen, theawakeningheart.com. And then, of course, my email, haroldfeddersen@gmail.com.
Fantastic. All right, great. So let's go ahead and we'll get started with today's topic. And we kind of both picked this one out, I think, and the illusion of control. So uh, I, I'll start us off because I think one of the, oh, you went and you must have to deal with the noise there. But I'll start us off. So the illusion of control is really speaking to everybody in the world, all human beings. We really have this tendency to want to micromanage our lives. We want to try to get things exactly the way we want them in the world. You know, our jobs, our relationships, our finances. Uh, welcome back. So,
Thanks.
we want to get everything in our lives just so. Um, and behind that control, or as we're calling it today, the illusion of control, is I've pretty much always found the desire for security or safety. So it's actually more about, in my experience, the illusion of security in the outside world. So we're looking for something we can hang on to, something we can rely on. Um, but we tend to look for it in the wrong place. So we're looking in the world outside our minds, the world outside of us. That's where we tend to go to look for the answer of feeling safe and secure and at peace, to take it one step further. And so we look for it. We cling to relationships is a common place where we look for, where we use control to try to gain safety and security. Um, yeah, we look for it in relationships. We look for it in our jobs. We look for it in, our children, our spouses. We look for it in building up a certain amount of money or finances. We think, oh, if I could just get enough, then, if I could just control that, then I'll be okay forever, right? For the rest of time. And that's all just not quite true. Because if you talk to anybody who's, had a wonderful relationship for 40 years, and that's what they consider the foundation, when that person dies or leaves inexplicably, their world is kind of shattered for a time. Or we've got this big amount of money built up in our bank account, and the market crashes, right, and we lose everything. And then our world seems to shatter for a period of time. And so there's all these things that they seem like, oh, this will keep me safe and secure forever. And there really just is nothing like that in the world of form. And and so that's kind of my starting piece for this topic is the illusion of control is really at the heart of it is the illusion of safety and security in the outside world. Then I'll talk more. I want to get your take on that, but then I'll talk more about where you can actually find that.
Nice, nice. I like how you're looking at that with the because I see control as it's a fear-based way of operating,
Absolutely.
which is kind of what you're saying. If we're afraid, then we want to create safety, and so then we go about arranging our lives or doing things in a way that makes us feel as though we're safe.
Exactly.
And it's this funny. It's kind of like it's kind of like having a blanket, and that this idea that the blanket is going to keep us safe, but it's actually just just a blanket. From anything significant, you're not really going to. The blanket's not going to help you.
Right. Exactly. It's oh, there we go. I think I fixed the cat. I apparently I had you on live the whole time, Harold. So now I'm getting my we're troubleshooting here live and in person. So but yeah, what were you saying again? Bring us back.
So if we are operating from a place of fear, because we can only choose to, there are only two places we can choose from. We can come from love or we can come from fear. So if we're coming from fear, then we need to create barriers for safety and,
Right.
um, like you said, so, build up security.
Yeah. Yeah, and the ways that we do that, right, are uh, they tend to be behaviorally. So we will we'll create rituals of behavior in our life um, that that we convince ourselves. We sort of create the belief that they will insulate us from uh, you know any number of things, catastrophe, heartbreak, and ultimately physical death. Right. Um, and so we do all these things, and some of them we label as uh, um, what's the word, dysfunctional, and others we deem as normal and appropriate. But so like if someone's like um, avoiding the cracks on a sidewalk when they're walking because they think if they step on one, somebody they love's gonna die, right? Right, that's what children do, and sometimes we take that into adulthood. We play those kind of make believe games.
Absolutely.
Um, uh, but it could be something that seems irrational like that, or it could be, hey, if I just get enough money, everything's gonna be okay for the rest of my life. I'll never have to live like I had to live when I was younger, or I'll never live in poverty again. Um, which we if we look at it objectively, we know that those things aren't true. They're kind of superstitions that we don't consider superstitions. We think it's sane thinking and sane behavior, but really it's this illusion. To go with the topic of the show, right? It's the illusion that something outside us can protect us. If we get just the right set of circumstances, then that will insulate us from the dangers of the world or the dangers of our own mind, right? So our own depression and grief and sadness and anger and hatred and all those things. Um, so it's very, in my mind, it's very simple, but the illusion part is it's very appealing. It's very uh, seductive is maybe a word I would use, because it's like, oh yeah, everybody out there in my life is saying you got to live this way to have a great life, or you got to live this way to not have a terrible life, right? It's usually one or the other, but it's, two sides of the same coin. So so yeah, any thoughts about that?
I like your the thing you said about the insulation, because that is the feeling we have when we're operating from a place of control. Like we
Right.
feel as though, um,
It's helpful. We think it's helpful.
yeah, we totally think it's helpful, and we think it's what we want. Because if I can control everything, then everything's going to go great.
Right.
Um, but we know very little about how well things will go for us if we let go of the reins more so,
Right.
and be part of the flow as opposed to trying to control something that's ultimately uncontrollable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to just take this moment to be clear that um, I'm a big fan of taking actions and creating things in the world. Um, I'm not saying that's not a good thing or that's not okay. I'm just saying that doesn't work as a strategy for um, consistent well-being and peace of mind over time. Because that's what we use it. We use our behaviors. We say, I'm going to take these actions because that's kind of what we seem to have control over, right? I'm going to take these actions. I'm going to try to create the life that I want so that I can be okay, so that I can be at peace, I can be happy, um, I can be, experience love and all those wonderful human experiences that we all love, we all covet, we all kind of are striving for. Um, so action's not is not a bad thing. It's just not a great strategy, and really anything to create results in the world, just not a great strategy for having a more wonderful experience of life within. Um, and so, and then I want to bring back to the insulation bit that that you just brought back up. That it seems to work, right? But that's, in my experience, that's because we don't have a great we don't have role models, and we don't have a lot of personal experience typically of what it's like to let go of the reins a bit. And so it's funny. I actually heard a quote the other day when I was thinking about what we are going to talk about for this show, and it was apparently Dwight D. Eisenhower once wrote that if you want total security, go to prison. They, there you are fed, clothed, given medical care, and so on. The only thing lacking is freedom, right? So that's,
That's a good one.
but so now I want to make a distinction in there is he's talking about physical freedom, right? And I'm pointing more towards a mental inner experience of freedom that we try to gain through control, but we don't actually know that in our attempt to control, and it's really an attempt to over control, right? Um, it's in the very attempting to control is the reason we don't experience as much freedom in our life and in our minds.
Hmm. Yeah, because there is no freedom when we're coming from fear.
Exactly. It's a prison. It's a self-created prison, essentially.
Yeah, as I was thinking about this topic a couple days ago, and what came to my mind was control. You control and joy cannot coexist because control is a clenching, it's a tightening, and joy is an opening. And you can't have those two things in the same space at the same time.
Right. Right.
So
They're
moving, for me, that's a great place to find out, if I'm, where am I operating from? Am I operating from love or fear? Am I operating from control or joy? Or peace? Um, so it's just, and there's that sort of visceral sense, the sense that we're tightening or closing um, instead of opening and releasing. Um, so for
absolutely.
me, it's always, I always like to just check in with myself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great barometer because a lot of times we're so used to the game of control that we don't even know that we're doing it. That's the
Hmm.
that's like the new baseline that we've created for ourselves.
Yeah, because often when we want to be controlled, usually it's people. We want to control people. I want this person to be this way, or I want this person to be that way. Um, I was thinking about a friend of mine who his children are grown up, but um, he was very strict with his rules of how, what his kids can do and how they move through life. And I was thinking it's a fascinating thing because it still shows up. One of his kids is 18, and um, he still interacts in the same way where I'm in control, and and I thought to myself, well, that's so fascinating because you actually don't have any control. What you actually have is an agreement. Your son is agreeing to um, behave in the manner in which you're requesting. So there's a request, and then there's an agreement. Because at
Right.
any moment, the son could simply say, "Yeah, no, that's not going to work for me,"
And
and
it's
then all of
it's
a
a
sudden,
it's a hidden agreement, right?
yeah, it's an unspoken agreement, and it looks like I'm in control. I'm the parent. You're the child, although this child is now a young man.
And
Um,
the person that usually thinks they're being controlled is often largely unaware of their agreement in the whole process.
Absolutely, yeah, because it's like, oh, my dad said this, so this is how it goes. Uh, but
Yeah.
all the power is actually in the hands of the son, uh, because he's the one who gets to choose to agree or not agree with the father in
So
this
that's
case.
so that's kind of what it means to give away your power, if you will, or your control.
Hmm.
um,
But it's an interesting thing because if you just look at it, it looks like, oh, there's the father. He's in control. He's sort of laying the rules, so to speak.
yeah.
And that's how it. I don't know. That's how I grew up. The parents make the rules and the kids follow along, and from the outset, it looks like control. But really, what it is it's an agreement. The father has made a request, maybe in a language that doesn't show up like a request, and then the son, in this case, has made an agreement to be in alignment with that request.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's one of the tricky things about relationships, right? Is all of that stuff going on in our own mind that we don't we're not even aware of. We don't fully understand. And that's why it's helpful to tune into conversations like ours, right? To begin to deepen our understanding of what's going on behind the curtain, if you will. And so Harold, I thought it'd be we've kind of identified the issue, if you will. The let's see if we can give people a better option. So we've talked a bit about you know control and controlling, attempting to control our behavior, attempting to control our circumstances, which is really just attempting to control other people, oftentimes at its heart. Um, the unspoken part there, of course, is I want to control you so that I can be okay, right? So that there's an unspoken part there that oftentimes our ego minds don't want us to look at, the part where we're giving them permission, or we're giving ourselves permission to feel miserable because they did this thing to me. Um, so given that control, it's kind of what we all know, and it's kind of a baseline for most of us. What is where's somewhere else we can go uh, when we're feeling like control is our best option, or at least attempted control is our best option?
Yeah, you know what? I always just like to keep it simple. So for me, when I want to control a situation, or I find myself trying to control another person or their um, actions or behavior, I always just ask, where am I coming from? There are only two options, uh, love or fear. Um, and that's usually the place where I start. Where am I coming from? Am I coming from love or am I coming from fear?
And
And
once you realize you're coming from fear, what then?
then there needs to be some form of surrender. Um, because control, as I said, control is a clenching, it's a closing. Fear
Right.
is a closing, it's a closing in. Um, whereas love is an opening. So we first need to, it's kind of like what we talked about last week. There needs to be a willingness to let open our clenched hand or let go of what we are holding on to, whether it's being right or feeling, like you said, secure or safe. Um, that's the first step for me, is that initial release, that let go.
Right.
Um, and then from there, you know, one of the questions that shows up for me a lot is, what would love do?
Yeah.
If I can get out of the fear, if I can get myself to a place where um, I'm then open enough to say, what would love do in this situation?
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of goes back to, like you said, what we were talking about last week, is there's a willingness involved, which really, in my experience, comes with experience and understanding, yeah, insight, where we kind of we have to be willing to look at control and our tendencies with control, and first see that it's not all it's cracked up to be, right? Because as long as we see it as this is my best bet, uh, that's what we're going to lean on. That's the direction we're going to head in automatically, is this is what I know. Sure, it doesn't always turn out. Sure, I'm stressed out of my mind, as I go about trying to control everything. But surely it's better than the alternative. Once we can see that our control is oftentimes the very cause of our upset and distress, then we can take a second look and get to that place where you pointed towards, which is, okay, there is a choice here. On some level of the mind, there is a choice between love and fear. Now, granted, that's usually one that we're unaware of making. So it's not a fault or a blame thing to say, oh, I'm going to beat myself up because, I chose fear, right? That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is just looking at it with fresh eyes and seeing, what if there's a better way than control, um, than micromanaging, than obsessing over the details, uh, and my experience of that, of where that's really valuable, is of another direction to look in, is the direction of, well, you said it already, which is love. And another way of saying that is our inner spirit, or our inner well-being, our innate well-being. There's, and I think we touched on this last week as well, and we probably will every week, because it's at the heart of, a conversation of truth, right? Which is, there's something about us as human beings. There's something in our minds, every single one of our minds, that is beautiful. And you know love is a great word. It's of love, it's made of peace. It's There's a, in our yours and my training as coaches, we learned, to call it essence, right? But it's the very foundation of who we are. And it's essentially unshakable by anything that we go through in our lives. So in other words, regardless of what you've been through, and what hardships, what tragedies and challenges, we still have the capacity to experience peace and love in any moment. And if you know that you have that capacity, then the control conversation becomes a very different one. It becomes uh, it becomes an understanding that I don't need this to go the way I thought I needed this to go for me to come out okay, or to even take it up a notch, for me to come out happy and well and at peace and in love with life. And so the more, in my experience, the more we look towards that innate well-being, that inner self that oftentimes we don't really know is there, um, the more easily we're going to come to that choice point and say, uh, I'm going to open up. Like you said, I'm going to go towards the opening instead of the constricting.
Yeah, I remember when when I when I was first told that we can only operate from one of two places, love or fear. I remember saying that's not true. There are all these other places that we can operate from, and uh, I remember the feeling because at the time, my sort of goal was kind of to control everything in my life.
Right.
Um, and I remember that I know that feeling. Uh, Even now, it's you can pull that up quite easily. There's that sort of resistance, like if there's only love and fear, like back then, it was like that can't be true because I was actually operating from fear at that time when I was told that. And I remember I remember just coming up with all these reasons why there are more than just those two, that there's like anxiety and it's all these other things. And it took me a while before I started breaking down all of the various places I thought I could be operating from as different and distinct uh, places, until I realized actually there's just the two, and there are all these flavors uh, of
Right.
fear. There's different ways that fear um, manifests itself, or that we create it, really. Um, and then if we just keep it simple, like there's love or there's fear, where do you want to operate from? Then
Right.
you actually have to, you're invited to step into that bigger space that love can hold for us to move through.
That's beautiful. So let's switch gears a little bit and see. I'd like to talk a little bit about the illusion part of control, right? Because I don't think we've talked much yet about how it's sure we do seem to have control over some things, but what is it that we think we're controlling that we're not actually controlling, or that we think we're controlling that's a good thing and it's not actually a good thing? Because the illusion suggests we don't actually have control where it is we think we have control, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I like to go back to the story of the father and son, because the father believes he has control. So that's the illusion. He's in
Right.
the illusion that I'm the father, what I say goes, this is how it is. And well, I'm kind of making him sound like he's actually a wonderful, loving man. Um,
That's why we're not
um,
naming names.
yeah, absolutely. Um, but he actually, it's a complete illusion. He actually has no control. What he really has is an agreement. So
Right.
if his son decided not to agree to his request, then he would actually feel like things are out of control.
Right.
Um, so that's how it's an illusion in that example. Um, for me, it's always in relationship to other living things. Um, like, like if I'm holding a pen, I guess I'm in control of the pen, because the pen's not making an agreement. So for me, it's always about relationships,
Right.
usually between people or people and animals. Animals are a great place to notice. Am I coming from love or am I coming from fear? You know, they're
Absolutely. You and I have had
wonderful,
we've had quite a few
wonderful teachers.
conversations. Yeah, and so I've got two dogs, right? And you've got
I've got a cat.
yeah.
Well, I don't
So
have a cat. We live together. I don't own
exactly.
him. Yeah,
Yes, we coexist.
we cohabitate, and I'm in charge of all the food and lodgings.
Right. Right. So what do you think it is that we, in our attempting to control, or our believing we control other people, um, or other things, right? Other living beings. What is it you think we tend to think we're getting out of it? Like because that's part of the illusion too, right? Is that
Yeah,
there's a benefit there. There's something we're gaining.
yeah. So if this person abides by my idea of how things should be, then I will be happy.
Absolutely.
You know, if my cat doesn't claw the furniture, I will be happy. Like it's in general, it's a resistance to reality. So if the
Right.
reality is that my cat is really into clawing furniture, then I'm at odds with life as life really is. So then I go to work to try and control my cat to make my life seem better because he's not clawing the furniture.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
That's
the
very, very well said.
thanks.
And one of the things I just wanted to expand on that a little bit is um, the the hidden part that's really important to begin to see in my experiences, the part where we say that's not okay in our
Hmm.
minds. And what we're really saying is this thing here not going my way has the power to take the peace of God from me. Now you can use different language, right? You can
Hmm.
say it has the power to take my happiness from me, or it has the power to take my well-being from me. But we're the ones that are, in essence, we're creating our own obstacles to peace. In fact, there's a whole section. I'm a student of the book, A Course in Miracles, right? The text. Um, and there's a whole section in that book titled Obstacles to Peace. And they're all of our own creation. So
Hmm.
there are no, in fact, there are no actual physical obstacles to peace that we can find without us mapping them onto those objects, right? Without us projecting our own condition. So that's another word for conditional happiness, right? Is
Hmm.
we don't. The key part of that is we don't realize we're the ones creating the conditions in our mind, with our own thinking, with our own belief systems. We think those things are fixed. We think those things are given. Of course, you can't experience peace or love or happiness in this situation. Could you?
Hmm.
And it turns out you can. If you don't believe me, go read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, right? The Holocaust survivor.
Yeah, my guy for that is Palden Gyatso, the Tibetan monk who was imprisoned for decades by the Chinese, um, when he said publicly that the Dalai Lama should be the leader of Tibet. And he was
Yeah,
brutally treated. I won't go into the details, but it's unbelievable
sure.
what he went through. And he comes out. He escaped and hiked through the mountains um, of Tibet to get to northern India. Um, and um, he every day he would do his meditation, and he would continually go back to basically a place of love. Um, and he survived that whole ordeal, and he never held sort of animosity or yeah, animosity towards the uh, prison guards. And it's fascinating because he could have peace in this inhuman situation. Uh,
Right.
and so I always think, you know, my life, hopefully, and the people that, clients, it's like our lives will never be as bad as what his life was. And
Yeah.
he could be in peace. So if he can be in peace in that circumstance, then we know that peace is not circumstantial.
And I think it's important to point out there's nothing special in particular about people like that, because you can find examples of that everywhere. Not common. It's not common because that's not how we're taught to live and think. But it's not these 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 individuals. They have a remarkable understanding for the truth behind life, but we all have that capacity, don't we?
Hmm. Yeah, because it's where do you want to operate from, love or fear?
Right.
And hate would be part of the category of fear.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. All those emotions that we think of as negative emotions, right? There are no negative emotions. Uh, There's just, they just are, but they're all offshoots of those two, right? Of love and fear. So,
Hmm.
grief, grief, it's not bad, but it's of fear, right? We're afraid of what's going to happen to us now that this person is gone, right? Or you know and you can link them all back if you look carefully. Um, but I thought this might be another good opportunity to kind of point us in another direction, which is and this is just kind of coming to mind, which is a lot of what we do in the world, you know, in the name of control, right, or in the name of fear, is often to do with some sort of trying to cheat death, right? Physical death is, it's not all that, right? A lot of it's let's try to optimize our experience while we're here, or let's run from the bad things. Of those bad things, death is chief among them a lot of times in my experience. Although it's it's hidden behind the scenes. There's a lot of denial about the inevitable eventual physical death um, that is behind a lot of control in my experience of looking at control. It's if you trace it back, the source, the root is um, I'm going to do all these things so I can live in the world in a certain way so that I can avoid this inevitable looming thing. Right. So I wonder if you have some insight about that.
Yeah, I think it reminds me of I think it's Zen teachings. There's this or Zen saying, "The goal is to die before you die," uh, and basically what that is talking about is when you enter the willingness to die, you become free to live. Like the goal isn't to die; the goal is to move
That will
through
take
that.
care of itself, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's it's going to happen whether we like it or not. Um, because in a, I shouldn't be quoted as any kind of Zen thing because I'm not a Zen master or Zen student even, but
Neither you or me.
yeah, but it the root, the base sort of root, most deepest fear is our fear of death,
Right.
which comes from um, a misidentification of what you are. Um,
Ooh, that's good. That's important. We might have to touch on that next week.
yeah, put that on our
I
short
call
list for
I did a talk a while back called "The Case of Mistaken Identity," and it
nice.
traces back to that, right? Not of the physical ID kind,
Hmm.
what you're saying remind me of a couple different sayings. One is I think is this in the samurai culture they used to teach everybody to wake up and essentially embrace death, right? With the saying that today is a good day to die, which not it goes back to what you're saying is not it's not it's often misunderstood as the goal is dying.
Hmm.
No, the goal is to make peace with what is, and death is part of what is, at least in the physical universe, right? Um, and so I always loved that 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 saying, that ritual, because they got up and they know today very well could be that day. We have no freaking clue, right? That's another illusion, right? The illusion of predictability of sure, I'm planning. I'm 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 basically betting that I'm gonna live till 80, 90 years old, somewhere in there.
Hmm.
But we just don't know. We don't know. And that takes me to just one of my favorite quotes ever. Uh, Martin Luther King Jr. I think was the one that I first heard it from. I'm not sure if he was the original source, but he said, "No man is truly free who is afraid to die."
Hmm. Yeah, because there's that. well, to continue with the battle reference, I guess if you go into battle and you're not willing to make that ultimate sacrifice, then some part of you will not be fully participating because some part of you is always on the lookout, uh,
Right.
for the
Which
for
is
the
that
arrow or
which is that controlling part of ourselves, right? That controlling that says, okay, if I could just not want this to happen bad enough, then I can control it and make it so that it doesn't happen. That's kind of the thought process, right?
Mhm.
And of course, you said it beautifully, which is we're not we're not present when that's going on in the mind. And so I love what you said, we're not fully participating in whatever's right in front of us. And that means we're not fully participating in our lives. And I just want to be fair and say that you and I are human beings too. And we both totally get caught up in control and fear sometimes.
Oh,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't want to make us out to be like these special
No,
people.
it's usually a daily thing.
Exactly. But there is something really valuable about beginning to understand the whole thing at a deeper level and kind of seeing, hey, this is what's going on. I'm trying to control the shit out of my life, right? Pardon my French. For people who both really know us, they know we're holding back thoroughly about our naughty language. But but yeah, there's when we begin to take a closer look or a second look with fresh eyes at this whole game of control that we play in our lives, that we're constantly playing, um, and we see it's not all it's cracked up to be, you know, through this control, through this constriction, as you talked about it, I'm actually shutting myself off from some really beautiful experiences of the unknown, of um, you know, peace and freedom, of kind of letting go, right? Come on, Harold. I know you got something you want to say.
No, that was perfect.
We said all we needed to say, I guess. So the illusion of control. Now to to just reiterate, control's not bad. Harold and I aren't demonizing anything that we do as human beings, right? That's a game we all get caught up in. It's nothing we need to beat ourselves up about. It's just something that it's worth looking at again and seeing there's more to it than the circular thinking of if I can control this, then I can get things the way I want, then I can be happy
Boom.
forever and ever again. Amen. Right.
Only 3 steps.
Only 3 steps to happiness. Dang, we got there faster than most of the rest of the self-help folks. So that's impressive. Yeah, so it's there's more to it than that, right? Anybody who's done that, and I think we all have, anybody who's played that 3-step process out knows, one, it's not so easy to control the world and get what we want. Two, if it does turn out we create circumstances that we want, doesn't always equal happiness, right? Sometimes we get there and we're miserable for some odd reason that we have no idea. We think, oh, we must have chosen the wrong goal, right? We must have chosen the wrong project. Instead of looking within and questioning the whole freaking process, right? And saying, maybe that's not how it actually works. Maybe maybe peace of mind, happiness, love, maybe those are God given. Maybe those are innate. Maybe we can start from that place. Wouldn't that be interesting?
Because even if you do apply the controls and you get everything lined up and you get the happiness, there are two things about that kind of happiness. One, it's
Mm,
not lasting.
not sustainable.
And two, you have to always be controlling the periphery of that happiness in order for that happiness to keep going. So you never actually get to enjoy it because there's this always this sense that if I now let go of the control, I'm going to lose this happiness. So you end up, it becomes this like perpetual motion machine.
It's a cycle.
Um, yeah, like once it's up and running, it's almost it becomes a thing where you have to keep it going. You have to keep it going. Um, and like you said, Tyler, it's not bad. It's neither good nor bad. It's just stop and ask yourself, where am I coming from? Where am I coming from? Love or fear? And geez, it sounds so simple when you just say it like that, but it's a process, and you can take it on daily or weekly or hourly or by the minute. And you just keep practicing, stopping and asking yourself, where am I coming from? It's a,
Yeah.
it's just a practice.
I I like what you're saying about the kind of the endless cycle of go for what I want in the world, achieve it or not achieve it, but in this case we'll say achieve it, and then because we're operating from the illusion of control, we've got to keep playing that game, right? So you jump to the next. It reminds me of a quote by the comedian Lily Tomlin, I believe is her name, and she said
Mm.
something like, um, "The problem with winning the rat race is you're still a rat."
Yeah.
And that speaks to the insanity, literally, of the one of those human thought processes that goes unquestioned, which is getting what I want in the world equals happiness, equals peace of mind, equals deep and profound lasting love, right? Any of those things. Those are all illusory because they all come from within. And um, that's just the start of that conversation. It's simple, like you said. In a sense, that's all there is to it. but but I encourage any of you out there listening to just start that conversation with yourself, right? Start that curiosity, that willingness to look within and say, maybe there's a better way. Maybe there's more going on than I originally realized. Oh, and the cops are coming for Harold. So, so
Time to
we're
go.
so we're gonna have to wrap up real quick here. I think we're coming close to the end of our time, Harold. Anything else you want to add to our conversation before we sign off?
Yeah, I guess yeah, just the same thing again. Truly is simple. Our minds want us to be really complicated and get into the minutia, and we start having conversations about, well, if I'm not in control of this, then this thing's gonna happen. And just stop. You know, am I coming from fear? Am I coming from love? Just make it that simple as of a practice for yourself.
And love is really nice. No, in all seriousness, that again, not to make fear a bad thing. It's just part of the human experience. Um, but it really is. It's nice to know where we're coming from, so that we can get back to the part of our minds where the choice was made for fear, uh, and we can take a second look. We can say, "Hey, I want to redo. Let's do love." Um, and and it's a beautiful place to learn to live from more and more of the time. All right, Harold. So to kind of close this conversation out, I want to just remind folks where they can reach you, Harold Feddersen. So you want to go ahead and tell them again?
Yep. So my blog is Heart to Hand. It's on WordPress. My Facebook page is The Awakening Heart. The URL, I believe, is facebook.com/Harold Feddersen, The Awakening Heart. And then my email is haroldfeddersen@gmail.com. That's HAROLDFEDDERSEN@gmail.com.
Fantastic. And you can reach me, Tyler Thurman, at coachtylerthurman.blogspot.com. That's TYLERTHURMAN. And if you resonate with either Harold or my work, or our message, our conversation, feel free to reach out to us. We have this conversation with people professionally. So if you're inspired to reach out to us to engage in that conversation on a deeper level, we look forward to hearing from you. Um, and and just as a reminder, this live Google broadcast is brought to you by Tyler Thurman Coaching and Harold. What's the name of your coaching
Feddersen
practice?
Coaching.
Feddersen Coaching. And so we thank you very much for joining us in this beautiful conversation about the illusion of control. And until next time, all the love in the world. We'll talk to you then.